Yeah, yeah, yeah. Holy Ghost will engage.
If you're running out of air, feel a tickle in your throat, or just can't get that gritty distortion you're chasing after with your false chord growls, you're not alone. I struggled for 4 to 5 years, went through multiple teachers, and did endless deep sigh drills. But I didn't like how I sounded and still felt like maybe I just wasn't built to growl. But after unlocking it myself and working with over 2,000 students, I've seen the same patterns again and again. About 90% of false chord problems come down to a few common mistakes. The good news? They're fixable, and we're gonna break them down so you can finally get those false chord roars you've wanted, do covers, and make your own music. Now the tricky part is that everyone has a different relationship with their voice, so there's no one size fits all approach that gets everybody to do the things in the exact same way, but I'm gonna give you approaches that I've seen work for many people in this video. Problem number 1, running out of air. Let's start with the big one. My student Paul spent years doing a deep sigh or a dog bark sound, roar, to get his screams. In doing so, he'd flap his false chords and get kind of a cool sound, but he'd run out of air way too fast. He thought that maybe if he used his diaphragm more and pushed with his stomach, that would fix the problem. But no luck. Why? Well, it's because he was too open. You see, if you have a rubber tire with a big hole in it, pumping more air into it might keep the tire inflated for a bit longer, but it's not gonna fix the problem. So what do we gotta do to that tire? We gotta patch up that hole so that tire doesn't leak air. Similarly, we gotta close up that hole in your throat while you're screaming. So try this. First, try to hold your breath while getting your false chords to flap. And by the way, this is easier said than done. If you need more approaches, not just for this, but also nailing your fry scream, I took some methods that work well for a lot of students and put it in a free video you can get by clicking the link in the description. Okay, back to the video. Problem number 2, having a breathy sound. Now, this is super common, where you go for a false chord scream and end up sounding like a passive-aggressive grandpa whispering and grumbling under his breath because he doesn't like carrots for dinner. I hate carrots. So why does this happen? Well, usually this means that you're powering your scream with breath or a whisper instead of your voice. Think about it like blowing out a candle versus singing a note. One's all air and the other's got real sound behind it. So here's how to fix it. First, instead of pushing out tons of air, focus on engaging your voice. Try this. Say, huh, like you're surprised. Now try to add false chord grit to it. Huh, 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 huh. You'll notice you can do that without having the breathy sound. Next problem, either sounding like a buzzer or Elmo. Now the next problem made my student William sound like a squawking bird. It's also made him sound like he was doing Mongolian throat singing, even though that's not what he was going for. And in getting these sounds, he thought that it meant that he should never use those tissues at all. And as a result, spent years searching elsewhere. But in reality, if you're sounding like this usually means that you're actually engaging your false chords, but not in the right way. Another possibility is that you might be using your arytenoids, but that's less common. So how to fix it? Well, I want you to continue to use those tissues, but instead, try to focus on making it more nasal. And when my student William did it correctly, the buzzer sound transformed into more of a crunchy sound instead of a buzzer or Elmo sound. Next, feeling pain. This one's huge. If you're feeling pain, something's off. When done right, false chord screams shouldn't hurt. And if it does, you're either using the wrong tissues, like arytenoids, or you're using what feels to me like the wrong part of your false chords. And I've definitely been there before, feeling like I swallowed glass after practice, and even a few hours afterwards, I'd feel like my throat was dry, and I'd feel a tickle or want to cough. And the problem is that this would instantly then trigger paranoia, and I'd wonder if I'd messed up my voice. And it's this fear and this chain reaction that made me give up screaming multiple times throughout my life before I decided to commit. But But anyway, here's how to fix the problem. You gotta compress your false chords together. The hypothesis that served me and my students to avoid pain is that if you're too wide open, there's too much slack and all the tissues sort of flap around, including the uncomfortable parts. But if you compress well, just the parts that are meant to flap will flap and you'll feel fine. Problem 5, you can't go high. Now, a lot of people think that their voice is too low to do high screams, but that's not true. Usually that just means you're stuck in your chest voice or using the wrong placement. You see, high screams come from shifting from your chest voice to your head voice register, not from forcing your chest register higher. Versus so here's how to fix it. Try this. I want you to make a witchy hee 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 laugh or a cartoon villain cackle. That's your head voice. Now I want you to add false chord distortion on top of that, and it'll feel weird at first, but with practice, you'll unlock those highs. Now remember, you don't need to be a tenor to scream high. You just need the right register. Problem 6, not enough distortion. Now this next problem was one of the most infuriating problems I've ever had to deal with. You see, I used to false chord scream like this. And pretty much everybody said that I was on the right track, I sounded good, and maybe just keep practicing. So on one hand, I felt encouraged, but deep down, I always felt disappointed because I wanted to get more distortion and felt like my scream's distortion knob was only turned up halfway. Like other problems on this list, I tried to fix it by pushing harder and harder from my stomach, but the distortion stayed the same. I eventually thought that, maybe my natural false chord scream just sounds like this. Now, if you can relate to that or are sounding like how I did, or just want your false chord scream to have more distortion, this usually means that you're not getting enough false chord tissue engagement, or you don't know that you can add fry distortion onto your false chords. How to fix it? So you want to add fry distortion on top of your false chord scream. This will fix it because you're literally doing a 1 + 1 = 2 sort of situation, where false chord distortion plus fry distortion equals more distortion. Now to do this, you can first try compressing your false chords even more until it makes it easy for you to close your vocal cords to sputter together and create fry distortion. Or you can actually start with the fry scream and then add false chord distortion to it. So in other words, you can go or and if this sounds really confusing, that's okay. I actually go over it in more detail in the free training I've left down below, so if you're interested, don't forget to check that out. Now, what I'm about to say might sound harsh, but I mean this in the best way possible. You are not unique. And what I mean by that is, no matter what your screaming problems are, I guarantee there's other people who have dealt with them and succeeded. And once again, after I've coached over 2,000 people with their screams, I've seen pretty much everything, and everybody pretty much has the same problems in one form or another. Heck, I was literally the slowest learner out of my music scene, and people would roast me all the time. Remember, everyone can learn this. It's not about being born with a metal voice, it's about building the right habits and experimenting until you find your sound. Now that you know the common mistakes for false chord screams, check out this video to learn the common mistakes for fry screams.